So I've been a broker for years, and we used to sell everything. Bars, restaurants, gas stations, flower shops, you name it, I sold it.
They are looking to either grow, scale their company or sell their company.
If you're doing 20 or $30 million, it's
How do you figure out if an HVAC company is actually ready to sell?
the check's not going to be big enough for them.
When you're starting a company, you have to think how you will be quitting the company.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great thing to do.
How will I know what's the value of my company?
Versus
What's the main stuff that pushes the number up or maybe a bit down?
a bigger company is typically going to sell for more money. Are they dominating their area, or are they hard to find? And that's the hardest part of the market today, is finding quality employees. And I've sold 136 as of yesterday heating and air companies.
Welcome to the HVAC Hotshots, the podcast where HVAC entrepreneurs like you learn to dominate your market and build multi-million-dollar empires. Every week, we bring you proven strategies, expert insights, and inspiring stories from industry leaders who have been in the trenches and come out on top. Whether you are just starting out or scaling up, this is your go-to resource to ignite your business growth. So buckle up, hotshot. It's time to turn up the heat and make your HVAC dreams a reality. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 8 of the HVAC Hotshots. Today we have got a really special guest joining us, Patrick Lange from Business Modification Group. We are going to deep dive into everything you need to know about buying and selling your HVAC business. Thanks for joining us today, Patrick. Before we dive deep into
Over there. Thank you so much for having.
No worries. Before we dive deep into the specifics of sales and buying that, could you tell us a bit about your background and kind of how you started with Business Modifications Group?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a broker for years, and we used to sell everything. Bars, restaurants, gas stations, flower shops, you name it, I sold it. A little over 8 years ago, I actually bought a heating and air company that I had listed for sale. And so in it for 2 years, went to go sell it. And when I did, I couldn't find a lot of information out there about selling a heating and air company. If you're doing 20 or $30 million, it seemed that people were lining up to help you, but doing 2 million, we were a smaller company like we were, there wasn't a lot of information out there. So at that time, a little over 6 years ago, I made the switch to just helping those looking to sell heating and air, plumbing, and electrical companies on the lower end of the spectrum. And we've been fortunate to sell over 135 cents.
Oh, crazy. That's fascinating. It sounds pretty fun. The podcast will be more about, kind of how to sell your HVAC business, because a lot of audience that who actually watch this video, they are business owners, right? They are looking to either grow, scale their company or sell their company. So a lot of questions will revolve around that. And I know you are the best guy who could answer all of that. So yeah, with all your experience, I'm curious, how do you figure out if an HVAC company is actually ready to sell? Have you had any cases prior where owners, thought that they are ready but needed to make any changes first?
Yeah, it's kind of a hard question to answer with just a sentence, of as far as when they're ready to sell. They're ready to sell when the owner's ready to sell at the end of the day. Does that mean that they're positioned best to make the most money? No, oftentimes not. Many people don't plan to sell, and that's something that, in my opinion, they should be doing is putting a plan in place to build a business to sell. And you'll run your business differently if doing that. So I come across a lot of businesses that are not ready. Their numbers are not good. The check's not going to be big enough for them. They don't have the systems in place, those types of things. And so it really just depends on what they're looking for in the sale. And then we kind of work backwards from that.
Gotcha, makes sense. When you say you have to plan your company to sell, right? Do you mean that when you're starting a company, you have to strategize how you will be quitting the company?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a great thing to do. I think running a business that you're planning on selling is different than just running a business. And so maximizing key things, putting systems in place that buyers are looking for, all those little things help maximize value and really make for a better business to run.
Gotcha, makes sense. So one has to make sure that they are kind of figuring out the SOPs, process and stuff like that before they're even thinking about, setting the business. Gotcha, makes sense. What are the most important factors that determine the value of an HVAC company? How will I know what's the value of my company?
So there's a few factors, and it's commercial versus residential, it's service and repair and replacement versus new construction, it's location, of the business, where you're located. It's what does the seller do in the operation? Is it a one-man shop and they're doing all the work, or do they have staff that's doing things? What kind of marketing and systems do they have in place from Google reviews, online presence? What's the market saying about them? As well as what systems they have internally to run the business. Can the business run without them if they have staff, or they need to do the entire thing? And so each one of those steps along the way has a positive or negative impact on the business. And to maximize value, they need to maximize each of those key points.
Hmm. Makes sense. I was actually going through your YouTube videos and you talked about stock sale versus asset sale. Could you please tell a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the bulk of what we sell and the companies we sell are what's called an asset sale. So the buyer's not actually buying the corporation, they're buying the assets of the corporation. So the seller would keep their corporation intact and the buyer just buys the assets. So the name, the phone number, the website, the customers, the trucks, the all that information, phone numbers. In a stock sale, they're actually buying the corporation itself. So they're buying the stock of the corporation and everything stays the same. We don't see that very often for a lot of different reasons, taxes, liability, those types of things. But typically an asset sale is more of what we do.
Gotcha. Let's talk a bit about numbers. What kind of multiple can I expect? If I'm selling a company, and what's the main stuff that pushes the number up or maybe a bit down?
Yeah, so it's a range, right? I mean, we've sold some companies in the last year for 2 times, and we've sold others for 10 times.
Hmm.
Um, Factors, once again, back to what we started initially talking about, is going to be size of the business.
Hmm.
A bigger company is typically going to sell for more money. It's going to be systems in place. It's going to be marketing. It's going to be profitability. Are they making money? If they are, how profitable are they? People in place. Is it just the owner? Do they have people that the owner can step out for a week or a month and the business continue run? So anywhere in that range, focusing on those items is going to slide you from that 2 times to the 10 times and anywhere in between.
Gotcha, makes sense. You talk a lot about marketing and how that thing is placed in a business. So how does that affect, the multiple that the potential, that's the potential.
Well, first, one of the first places a buyer is going to look when they find out the company's for sale is online.
Mm.
What's the market saying about them? Do they have a lot of Google reviews? Are they positive Google reviews? Do they have an online presence? Can people find them? Are they dominating their area, or are they hard to find? We have some companies that come to me to sell, and I look them up online. I can't even find them. And so a buyer is they're wanting to buy that name and that brand and that reputation. And if the reputation is strong, then it has a bigger impact on it. If it's not, then it doesn't. Also, do they have the ability to consistently make the phone ring through their advertising efforts, their marketing efforts? Have they built systems so that they can turn the switch on when they need more business coming in, or slow it down when they get too busy?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Curious, asking from a curiosity point of view. Let's say there's a company called as A and another one as B, right? Company A is making more revenue selling via offline advertising stuff, and using door knocking stuff and stuff like that. Company B is making a lesser amount or lesser revenue, but they are dominating on Google or other online platforms. Which one is worth more?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer, right? There's got to be a lot of other factors that go into it, but certainly somebody that has repeat revenue built into the system based on their marketing and advertising is gonna help them substantially.
Gotcha. So the key here is repeatable, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. For owners listening who might be thinking about selling in the future, what are some quick and kind of an effective ways that they can increase the business value before they're actually going to the market?
So getting a valuation done, understanding what their business is worth, so they really have an understanding of where they're going to be. Clean books and records. So making sure their books are clean, we can identify profit. There's not a lot of personal expenses inside of there. A business that's built on service, repair, and replacement. So staying away from that new construction, focusing on individual customers and taking care of their needs. And maintenance agreements. Buyers love maintenance agreements, and so having a maintenance agreement program in their business definitely adds value.
This was gonna be my next question now, actually. Talking about the maintenance agreements, how does that actually affect the value of a sale?
A lot, right? So if you have a high concentration of maintenance customers, you're typically able to spend less money on marketing because you have more sales opportunities inside the customer's home. So if you do 2 visits a year, that's 2 opportunities for you to deepen the relationship with the client, with the homeowner. That's opportunities for you to take your time and talk about indoor air quality and other opportunities to upsell, and get a deeper share of wallet. And they typically trust you more. So if there's something that needs to be replaced, often if you have developed a relationship as a maintenance customer, they're going to take your advice because they're paying for their own loyalty, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they're paying you to take care of their system on a continuous basis. So when something goes wrong, they're going to call you first. You're the guy that they're paying, or girl, depending on who owns it, that are paying for that. So they're paying for their own loyalty, which absolutely adds value.
Gotcha, makes perfect sense. I love that you're being, very to the point. You're not going here and there. You're being very focused here. Talking about the financing stuff, could you explain how SBA loans, kind of work in these transactions?
SBA currently in the last few years has loved the trades. So we do a lot of transactions with SBA. Typically, in today's market, a buyer can get in for 10% down. SBA will finance the other 90%. Sometimes the seller needs a whole 10% note, but it's not a big amount of money that somebody has to have down. They'll typically finance over 10 years. So it allows people to get into the business with relatively little money out of pocket and the cash flow business. And to me, it's a great opportunity to get involved.
And what's the timeline of it?
10 years. 10 years. So SBA note is a 10-year loan.
Gotcha. And talking about the sale or buying process, how long does the entire sales process typically take from the very initial to, the complete?
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer because every situation you need. I've had some companies where I sold one we closed yesterday. It took us almost a year to find the right buyer, the right scenario, get the financing lined up, getting everything done. I have others where we'll go to market this week and we'll get multiple offers instantly. So typically around the 6-month window is reasonable, from deciding they want to sell, getting everything together, going to market, and then finding a buyer and closing.
And once we have found a buyer, how long does it take?
Yeah, typically 60 to 90 days. Once we have identified a buyer, we've agreed to basic terms, 60 to 90 days is typically pretty real.
Gotcha. And in your experience, what's the biggest mistake you see, HVAC owners are making when they're trying to sell?
Well, not planning it, right? Something brings it on, whether it's age, a key employee leaving, a divorce, or an illness, and they hadn't thought about selling. And so now they're trying to play catch up on getting things in line, where if they would have started from the start building that business to sell, it would have been substantially easier for them.
A big concern for many owners is actually their team, So how can they ensure that their employees are kind of, being taken care of during and after the sale? And how do you actually communicate with their employees that, hey, I'm actually going to sell this company?
Great question. So typically we don't. We don't tell employees until a transaction is complete for a variety of reasons. But one is they panic. They don't know what's going on and they think worst case scenario. And so they get very nervous when they really shouldn't. I've sold 136 as of yesterday heating and air companies. I've never had a buyer come in and get rid of employees. They're buying the employees because the employees are the one that do the work and generate the revenue. And that's the hardest part of the market today, is finding quality employees. And so I've never had that happen. And we typically wait until the deal's done. So then when we tell the employees, we're able to say, hey, I'm retiring. I found this buyer. Here's who they are. Here's what they're doing. Here's what the opportunities are, instead of just speculation.
Makes perfect sense. So you talk about, the planning and stuff like that, but you would have seen that some deals still fall apart, right? What are some of the reasons that you have seen, and how can, sellers protect themselves?
So some people, when they get involved in the onset or the thinking of selling, they stop focusing on growing the business and their numbers decline. So that's one of the key things we see, that if it takes 90 days, that buyer in the process is going to say, okay, show me the recent numbers to make sure the business is still doing well. And if they've taken their foot off the gas or stopped paying attention to it, and those starting to decline, it makes a buyer nervous. And so staying focused on running the business, even though there's additional stress and additional things going on, making sure that business is still doing well, Staff is still there, still taken care of. Customers are being taken care of. All of those things are still important.
Are you seeing more private equity buyers coming to the trades lately?
We did, in the last few years, last 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot. I'm seeing a little bit of a slowdown now where I'm selling a lot of to a lot of just individual buyers, but private equity is certainly still there.
Are they good fit for everyone?
Yeah, not for everyone. That's the beauty of the market and the market being so strong.
Mm.
Sellers are in a position to be able to almost hand select who they think's a better person to buy their business. I think there's a lot of great private equity companies that do a lot of good things and take care of a lot of people. There's others that are just focused on the bottom line and growing that business to be able to sell. And for some people, that's not okay. And so making sure you understand who the buyer is and interviewing the buyer. And really, it's just kind of tooting my own horn, but working with a broker, somebody like me, to get as many eyes on the business as we can. So we go to market. We want to find as many buyers as we can so the seller can interview them and see who would be a good fit. Because there's all this, everybody says private equity. Well, there's a big variety of private equity companies and how they're structured and what their plans are and who's running them and all the different things they do. And so throwing a label on every buyer who has financial resources behind them doesn't make sense. And so finding who's the best fit for you and for your business is more important in my opinion.
Sounds perfect. Let's say, if an owner is already getting offers directly, do they still need a broker?
Yeah, I think so. And once again, most sellers don't know what their business is worth. So if they're getting offers, they don't know if it's a good offer or a bad offer. For most of my clients, selling their business is the biggest sale of their life. That's the most amount of money of anything they're ever going to sell. And most are only going to do it one time. And so to me, having somebody in your corner is so important, whether it's me or somebody else. I'm not perfect for everybody, and I don't claim to be. There's a lot of other good brokers out there who sell a lot of trades companies and understand what's taking place and what's going on. And so I think having somebody in your corner is so important.
Following up on that, what would you say is the biggest advantage of working with a broker? And how can owners choose the right one?
So first part of the question, why the advantage of dealing with a broker is going to be somebody who's done it before. Once again, I've sold 136 heating and air companies. My guess is you haven't. And so my guess is most of my clients haven't. And so I would think that I've got a different perspective and a different lens and understand numbers and what's involved in a deal better than somebody who's never done it. That's the first part. Second part is, how do you know who to deal with? Well, I think finding somebody you trust and feel comfortable with is a huge decision. Finding somebody who's done it before, who's been in your shoes. My perspective is unique. I owned a heating and air company. I bought a heating and air company. I ran a heating and air company. And I sold a heating and air company. And then I've sold 136 cents. So I got a different view than somebody who's never done it. And so finding a broker who you feel comfortable has the competency and has done it, but more importantly, somebody you just trust. And it's a big deal. And you're going to be working side by side with them. So making sure that you feel comfortable with them and their ability.
Makes perfect sense. So you said that you have sold 136 businesses, right? So what's the average revenue of those companies? It would range a lot. Someone would be in, let's say, $1 million or so. Another would be on 15, 20, 30 million. But what would you say is a good number or is a good revenue number, which you should actually meet before, before selling a company?
So the bulk of what we sell is doing $1.5 million, $2 million up to $6 million. I'll sell a few a year doing the retail at 10 million, a few doing less than $1 million. But really at the $1 million threshold, that's where most technicians have to get out of the van. So what I see is a company typically because the owner won't get out of their way. They won't get out of the van. They're the ones turning the wrenches, installing the equipment, doing everything. And they're slowing their growth because they won't get out of their own way. Buyers don't call me looking to buy a job. They're looking to buy a business. So getting above that $1 million threshold to me is so important before you consider looking at selling.
Makes perfect sense. For those just starting out or, someone is just trying to grow their business, what should they focus on to build a bit long-term value?
Repeat and systems, putting things in place that allow the business to continue to perform without the owner's direct involvement, and focusing on service, repair, and replacement, staying away from one-time new construction kind of project.
Makes perfect sense. Finally, Patrick, the last one. And I'll be really honest with you. I have had a lot of guests on the show, but you were one of the most straightforward one who gave who gave answers as is. For someone, or for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to, kind of get in touch with you?
Well, I'm very active on social media, Facebook and LinkedIn. I've got a YouTube channel, and my website is businessmodificationgroup.com. They can reach out through any of those channels. Be fantastic.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for sharing all these insights with us today, Patrick. Do you have any other thing to add up here?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad you're doing this and sharing it with your members and viewers. I think you'll add a lot of value, and I certainly appreciate you giving me the invitation to come on today.
It's my pleasure. This has been incredibly valuable. And to our listeners, don't forget to comment if you have got any other question. And yep, that was all for today's one, guys. Until next time, bye bye. Have a great